This segment of the Mort's Garagecast is brought to you by Goodiez, the app where gamers and collectors go to negotiate the best deals. Download the app now and you can get a brand new physical copy of Paper Mario for the Nintendo Switch at 25% off. I'm going to say it's an underrated experience.
I think it's ugly and boring and sad.
Nothing should go to jail more than wastes of my time.
I have extremely strong feelings about this topic.
You're about to watch a clip from the Mort's Garage podcast, the full-length version of which will be up shortly after this one posts over on the second channel, Mort's Attic. In the full-length version of the podcast, we also talk with Finn about some of his favorite games of all time. He gives some advice to Josh's band about which songs to cover, and a bunch of other stuff in there as well. The link is in the description below. I hope to see you over there, and in the meantime, enjoy. We wanted to do a segment where we decided whether things were overrated or underrated.
Okay.
And we haven't given Finn what these are.
Nope.
We've tried to stick with gaming and be a little bit away from music, but if a music thing gets in there, I apologize.
We'll allow it.
This is more jazz than rock and roll.
Okay.
We're just going to see where it goes.
Okay.
Playing old consoles on new tech.
So plugging in your Sega Saturn on your 60-inch OLED TV. Josh, why don't you start with this one?
Okay. It's kind of the only way I would play an old console.
Yeah.
Or like emulated versions of it. So I think that's underrated. I really like really high def version of old pixels. Like I like it as crisp and as clean as possible. So you can just see like how grimy all that stuff
I'm
looked.
about to walk out
I
of
like
this show. I'm
that.
disgusted.
CRT only?
Yes. Or if you want to play it on a modern monitor, you need an upscaler. Or to use CRT shaders. I'm disgusted in
No, I hate that. I turn all that off. I want it as raw dog as
But you
possible.
understand that what you're seeing when you see all the pixels is not actually the intent of the artist.
Right. Totally. 100%. I understand that. I love it. I love it.
So do you pet the cat backwards?
Yeah, I'll pet a cat backwards. Sure.
Okay.
Josh is a big cat guy.
I pet the cats both ways. I do like filters sometimes when you're like you can turn that on and just see sort of what it does, and some of them get close. I feel like there's no CRT filters that ever look quite good.
No, there's no substitute. You got to get a CRT. For me personally, I think the optimal experience, I know people are into like the PVMs and the BVMs, which I get, but those are actually a little bit too nice for me. I think that the best experience is playing it on a mediocre TV with with composite cables.
Right.
Or even if it's like NES, I want to say even like RF might be
I was
the
going
way
to
to
say,
go.
plug it into a VCR first.
Yeah, if it's like NES. Like, legitimately, I think it's like I'm not even a hipster about it. I just think it's legitimately a better experience because it's reflective of what it actually was at the time.
Yeah, they've shown that image of even as far in as the PSX, you have Dracula from Castlevania Symphony of the Night. The way his eyes look, they don't look correct when you're viewing the actual pixels. It was the dithering and that the CRT did that made it look really cool. Yeah, I like that. I like it raw and dirty too.
I'm with Finn. CRT all day. I've got a big 32-inch CRT. Does not do anything high def, but it has component inputs, and some of the consoles that natively can take component, like a PS2, look great. However, I do like seeing, what's the console? I have a Dreamcast with a great HDMI converter. Mwah, perfect. So that's the way to play Dreamcast. But N64, doesn't matter what filters or things you put on it. It's a muddy, textured mess, and I always on CRT.
So Josh,
even the Switch, even when they have the N64 games on the Switch, some of them are impressive looking. Like they just did Extreme G on it, which is an old like F-Zero racing game, and it looks great. Like it looks awesome, but my heart always CRT.
Please tell me, Josh, you aren't one of these monsters that will stretch to fit 16:9. What
day is it? You know?
Wow.
We'll see.
Truly
lawful. I have an ultra wide at home.
True chaotic neutral.
It'll just be. Typically, no. I prefer to have things in the aspect ratio they're supposed to be. But there's a couple times where you don't really have a choice.
Yeah.
Kind of have to go with it.
That's it.
You always have a choice.
Right.
But let's move on.
You do.
I have extremely strong feelings about this topic.
It's there's going to come a day where you cannot find a CRT, right?
Yeah, but you'll be able to get a Retro Tank or a Frame Meister.
Yeah, that's true.
I think if we have vinyl records coming back with new players, I feel like they're going to do something with CRTs in the future.
They'll make like $1,500 like gamer CRTs.
Yeah, maybe.
People, hardcore collectors will buy them.
Yeah, they will.
Are you going to get the cathode tube ray, like
there's some
tubes?
There's some factory somewhere that'll make them forever for whatever
maybe
random like industrial applications or something.
If the Analog Pocket can sell out gussied up NESs, I think CRTs are not far behind. Imagine in the early 90s if someone would have said there's going to be a boom in vinyl records and players and all that, we'd have been like, you're crazy. Yeah. And here we are.
Okay. Our next topic is one that's very near and dear to my heart. Overrated or underrated balding.
I mean, I'm not a fan.
I was going to say overrated.
Yeah. Very overrated.
Yeah.
I'm blessed with this Arabic head of hair. I'm a fan of it. Yeah. So I'm going to say balding's overrated.
As a person whose experience with balding started at 16 years old, I would say overrated.
Okay. All right. So, Finn, overrated?
Not a fan.
The next one.
Next one is...
Oh.
Let's get into it. Finn, I think you and I are of an accord here. Ocarina of Time.
Overrated, underrated.
Yeah. So I think there's a preamble here. We should first say the Zelda series is one of the greatest series of games of all time. The original Legend of Zelda was a monumental, just phenomenal piece of art that really just went above and beyond. Link's Awakening, in some ways, in my mind, is even better game. And A Link to the Past is like the prototype for how you bring a game from an old generation into a new generation. Like it's perfect from the ground up. And Ocarina of Time
is exactly the same.
Is like just a tragedy.
I totally agree.
Of sadness of like what happened to this game.
Hey, don't you wish that Zelda everything was a smeary green and brown blur? Wouldn't that be great? Yeah. And you had to play it on the worst controller ever made.
Yeah.
These are all things I love.
Don't you wish they took
I'm cool with it.
Don't you wish they took all the like joy and like childish charm out of the game and just made it dark green, dark brown?
Don't you wish while playing the original game you were interrupted constantly? Just by the game itself. Constantly. Yeah. Somebody once described like the difference between like the old Zeldas and Ocarina of Time is like the difference between the excitement of exploring an unknown cave versus riding Disneyland's new dark ride, Explore the Cave. Like that's the difference, is that Ocarina of Time feels like an amusement park ride.
That's amazing.
If you're the type of sicko that also prefers Metroid Prime, then I guess I don't know what to say.
Yeah, that's not a Metroidvania.
No, not at all.
Oh, so Finn, did you have Ocarina of Time hype back when it was coming out? Were you reading the articles and following along?
Yeah.
What was your journey?
Yeah, I was, but I'm extremely like picky about art direction, not graphics, because those are two different things. Like graphical fidelity and art direction are two totally different things. For example, Earthbound, not the most impressive thing, in terms of graphical fidelity, but incredible art direction. I'm very picky about art direction, so as soon as I saw the screenshots, I was like, I'm out. This is disgusting.
Whoa. From the beginning.
Yeah.
You bring that up, to me, it's Mario 64 versus Ocarina of Time, because I think Mario 64's art direction fits perfectly with the graphical limitations that they had. It like fits, and I think it's the opposite with Link.
Mario 64 is also really fun.
It is. Yeah, it's a good time. Yeah.
Well, losers, I'm going to say Ocarina of Time is probably overrated because it gets greatest of all time distinctions regularly. I can admit, as a self-professed N64 fan, that Ocarina of Time has its, limitations. It's stuck in its time period, but I still love it. I still would play it right now. I don't care if it's brown, green, purple, or whatever.
Which it is,
it's awesome.
all of those
it's
things.
It's a fun time.
Yeah.
I think it's.
Yep.
I still go back and enjoy the way it feels to ride Epona, and I think adapting all of that 2D stuff to a 3D space had to have inherent limitations. But I still thought it was so well done. It was the first game I played where I felt like I was on a real adventure and really enjoyed it. And I liked the pacing of it, where you could meander in a town and get into a dungeon, but the dungeons weren't over long. The water, temple was super annoying and frustrating, but I still love the game. But I can say it's overrated because people still say it's better than God of War 2018. I'm like, no, it's not. But in my heart, it's strong.
Finn, let me ask you, the next series of Zelda games that came out after Ocarina of Time, do you feel like any of the 3D Zeldas, do you like any of
Wind
those?
Waker, yeah, because I felt like Wind Waker was a successful 3D update of, the Zelda formula, which,
and the art direction was really good.
It was amazing. And interestingly, everyone absolutely hated it at the time. I think now
Zelda.
Yeah, exactly. Now I feel like people seem to appreciate it.
Love it.
But it was despised at the time.
How do you feel about Breath of the Wild?
I hate it.
Really?
I think it's ugly and boring and sad, and the world is empty and there's nothing to do, and it feels unfinished to me. It feels like they made a really cool engine, but they didn't finish making the game. Yeah.
What about Tears of the Kingdom? Did you just skip because it's
I watched my wife play it, so I'm pretty familiar with it. It definitely looks better. Or not looks better. I mean, it does look better, but it seems to be a better game. But I also hate puzzles, so I would not enjoy it, but I respect it.
Nothing but in that game. There's no dungeons.
Yeah,
so
I mean, just the shrines and stuff. How is it a Zelda?
Those are just puzzles.
Yeah, how is it a Zelda game if I was like, oh, cool, I'm going to a dungeon. I'm like, oh, it's literally just one crappy puzzle, and then we're done?
That's how I felt, too.
Yep. Every single one.
That's it? Yeah. And there's 75 of them or whatever it is, and they're all the same?
Well, this is where we diverge, because the Breath of the Wild is the first 3D Zelda game that I actually ever liked.
Okay.
But I understand.
Yeah.
I get it.
You mentioned you and your wife with games. Do you guys have games you enjoy playing together?
No. She will play one game to absolute death for months.
Okay.
She gets 100% on everything she plays. I mean, she played Genshin Impact for 3 years.
Wow.
I don't know what that is.
She played that on console?
Yeah. Genshin Impact is a gacha game. It's brilliant. It's probably the best looking game I've ever seen.
It's very Breath of the Wild too.
It's like Breath of the Wild but better, which I know is going to upset a lot of people. But I mean, they had a lot more resources. The game makes billions and billions of dollars a year.
Yeah,
so
they made a lot more money.
Yeah,
too.
so they have.
Did you play Honkai Star Rail?
She's playing Star Rail now, which also, the beginning of it's a little bit rough, but once you get into some of the newer content, it's amazing. So, but it's turn-based. So if you find the idea of Genshin interesting, but you don't like the battle system, then try Star Rail. If you prefer turn-based.
Interesting.
Right. Next topic.
Let's do the next topic.
Overrated, underrated, running games from Blockbuster.
I'm going to say underrated because it was nice to be able to go try out a game and not be locked in. Games are a lot cheaper now for access. I know there's still demos, but I also think because we've shortened the ability to have access to things, there's an experiential element of Blockbuster that I don't think people will understand. Going, and if a game that you wanted to get wasn't there, you would look around at the boxes and the other stuff, and then you would end up finding something that could be a new favorite. You can't really do that in the same way now. And also, when you're choosing between, let's say, 20 to 30 games versus now there's 200 to 300 games to play at a time. I'm going to say it's an underrated experience. For all of the convenience that we have now, which I love, I love the experience of going and being like, I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be a wild adventure.
It's Friday, and let's find out what this weekend's going to be like.
Same with films and everything as well. But yeah, I'm going to say underrated.
Yeah, I'm with you. The other part of it that I liked a lot is, or in hindsight, I don't know if I liked it at the time, but in hindsight was good, is that if you had this game for whatever it was, 3-4 days or whatever, and even if at first you sort of didn't like it, because you had committed to it, you would force yourself to play it for a little while. And so now it's like, oh, if I play something for literally like 90 seconds, like, and it doesn't grab me, I'm out. Same with music, you know? So I think, you know, there's the forcing function of making you stick with a game that might make you appreciate it. Like there's so many like NES games in particular that like I'd rent, like, I don't know, Ikari Warriors 2 or something like that I would never have like forced myself to, or Golgo 13 or something like that, which, you know, in hindsight, I'm glad that I forced myself to play those for a couple days, because otherwise I would have bounced off them immediately.
I buy games on Steam now, and like I just skip the playing part.
Totally.
Yeah, I don't even have
imagine telling the 11-year-old version of yourself, like, yeah, you're going to have 200 games and you haven't even played 3/4 of them.
Right. Yeah. You don't know. They could be your favorite game in the world.
And it will cost less.
Right.
They're all $4.
Right.
Speaking of art direction, Golgo 13, I do have to give a nod. That's a visually really cool looking game.
Yeah. Well,
have you seen that one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Go Nagai is one of the all-time greats of manga.
All right. We got another good one here.
This is a juicy
Overrated, underrated. Sonic the Hedgehog.
Well, I think Sonic is underrated, but only because everybody correctly despises it. Like, here's what so it has to sort of, by virtue of the fact that everybody hates it, it has to be underrated, but there's good reason for that.
I have a theory. Sonic was the mascot in a a side of a war that was happening, right?
You had to pick one.
Yeah.
It was the Nintendo Sega War.
It's a good theory.
The console wars. And I think that, obviously one side clearly won, destroyed the other side. But those people could not, they couldn't just let go and be like, well, we lost.
Wow.
Just people inundated in loss, right?
Okay.
This is an amazing way to grow an audience, Josh. Yeah.
I think as a 90s mascot, I think you're correct. Sonic is underrated because he's like a perfect encapsulation of like the 90s attitude, like a gecko on your shirt on a skateboard. Yeah. His games are completely overrated.
Yes.
Playing a Sonic the Hedgehog game is worse than not playing any game at all. It's just better to just sit and look at a off TV than it is to play a Sonic.
So I've never really been hooked by a Sonic game before.
I've tried
because everyone's like, "Oh, Sonic's the best," whatever. And so I tried Sonic Adventure. I tried, even what's the one that they just did where it's like Sonic Mania. I tried all of it, and I've never been like, man, I got to keep playing this the way that Mario does or whatever. So, but Sonic All-Stars Racing, huge fan. I love that series. It's so fun. I like kart racers. They nail the mechanics of it. The multi-vehicle thing is better.
Just Mario Kart?
No, because the multi-vehicle thing it's so well done. Seriously, it's a great game. But I will say that as a dad with 3 small children, the Sonic movies, I expected to be like, let's move along. We loved them. They're such good, fun, like, my kids were cracking up the whole time. I don't love Jim Carrey. He was great. Like, everything in it was great. And also John Ralphio. He's a good Sonic. So I'm going to...
Cyclops is his buddy.
I'm going to say, as a character, I try. It doesn't do anything for me.
How about award shows? How do you feel about award shows?
Strong opinions here.
Yeah.
Okay. Completely overrated. Completely overrated. I think having been a part of award shows, even on the small scale. The old band was in the Orange County Music Awards. It just was so clear to me from a multitude of experiences how much there's nothing genuine about any of those award exchanges. So I'm going to say overrated. Entertaining when Will Ferrell and Kristen Wiig do a little bit. I'm a fan of that. Ricky Gervais has some scathing, hilariously funny monologues. That would not happen without award shows. So I'm not going to say they're garbage, but I can't remember the last time I was like, I need to watch a major award show, no matter what the genre of the award was.
Yeah,
that's my take.
Totally meaningless, in my opinion. Like, who cares? Especially because, these tend to reflect opinions that are very different from what normal people actually care about. Like, I mean, I'm not the most plugged into cinema culture or whatever, but when I see the Oscar nominations for Best Picture and I haven't heard of any of them, that seems a little bit odd.
Yep. None of them were the movies that made any money.
Yeah.
Other than, I guess, this year.
I'm okay with that. Yeah. I mean, sometimes a movie's made and they don't have the budget to find an audience.
But when you haven't heard about any of them, I understand, if sort of a smaller one sneaks in, that's cool. But if 5 out of 5, I'm like, I've never heard of this, that seems a little odd.
But on the flip side, if of the 5 Best Picture nominees, one of them's Despicable Me, because that's just what the popular one was.
Listen, I want to play for the winning team.
Yeah.
Whatever's popular, that's what I like.
Yeah, I'm tired of this movie is the Oscar winner because it's about a king who has a sprained ankle.
Right.
And he can't walk around. Who cares? I thought award shows to me are worse than overrated. They are a waste of my time.
Yeah, and that's good.
Nothing should go to jail more than wastes of my time.
I have a checklist for how I know that I'm not going to like a movie. If the trailer for it has rain, if it has sheer fabric, if it has horses, if it has crying, and if it has a strained mother-daughter relationship, if there's more than maybe 2 of those things, I'm probably out.
Yeah, I agree with those. Yeah, rain. It's just it's great because it's well, I'm not going to go see this new Twister.
Right.
It's nothing but rain.
Especially now because movies are so dark. I'm like, okay, I'm just literally not even going to be able to tell what's happening on screen.
It used to be impressive when they made a movie and they did a rain scene and they're like, well, it's got to be milk because it's the only way it'll show up. Like, wow, that's crazy. And it's now rain is just something they can generate.
Right.
And it's who cares? What? This doesn't have to be raining.
Wow.
All right, we're going to do
let's do a couple more.
Let's do a couple more. How about I didn't know if I put it on here, but active time. Oh, there it is. Yeah, active time battle. What's the other word for that in JRPGs? It's
not turn-based.
Turn-based, yeah.
Oh,
right?
turn-based.
But it's turn-based, but with a timer.
Yeah.
I don't know I don't know if there's another word for it. I only know it for that.
The marketing was active time battle, which was kind of like Chrono Trigger. And,
well, I think it was Final Fantasy IV. I think was the first game to have ATB.
All square.
In practice, it was just the same as every other turn-based system. So I feel like it was kind of overhyped.
It was the one thing that would happen and be well, you waited too long, so the enemy just went.
Yeah,
right.
But in reality, how often does that really happen? And in theory, if you put your controller down and went to go get a drink or something, the enemies would keep attacking you and kill you. But I don't know. I feel like it didn't actually really have any effect.
How do you feel about turn-based battle these days? Is it still something that you're into?
Yeah, definitely.
It is.
I don't like feeling rushed in games. I hate anything. This is why I don't like Majora's Mask either. Because anything where I feel rushed, to me, makes it not fun. That makes it feel like work to me. So I like to take my time.
I feel like when I play games with turn-based battles, I have to take a college course first on understanding the battle system. So for me, it feels like work, but in a totally different way. I think the reactive nature of a first-person shooter is always going to be more engaging than thinking of, well, if I combine these stats this way and then I activate my party members this way and I don't know. I get it. It's like chess.
Yeah.
And there's something wonderful about that. And when I learned that, it's so satisfying. So when I started to get the hang of, for me, Final Fantasy VII on the PS1 had that element where It felt like I could understand it, and it was a pretty simple, introduction. And I think that was by design, but it worked for me. And then Final Fantasy VIII come along, and I was like, well, I'm out.
That one was like, it was a cool idea, but in practice, it was very too convoluted. And also, once you understand it, you can break the game in like 45 minutes.
Yep. Yeah. I used to, that was my number one game genre. Turn-based fighting was like the way I lived my life. I have found as I've gotten too old that I just don't have time for it unless it is in a strategy game context. If I'm also able to position my people around a map and then pick what they're doing, I tend to like that more. I don't think I could play like just a new JRPG again, where it's just like we're lined up on the sides and you pick and then we go. Like I need at least, and I know they've been putting this in games like double speed or like I just need everything to go faster.
I really like
boom, boom.
like probably starting with Super Mario RPG, when they would include just some simple action kind of element there, where like if you push the button right when you hit your attack, you do double damage, that sort of thing. That's a nice level of interactivity to me.
And to be honest with you, the offense part of it is not what really gets me. It's the defense part of it. Paying attention when the enemy hits you to be like, oh, let me see if I can actually block this. That made that half of the equation like interesting.
Right.
Instead of just like, okay, just tally it up so that I can get to my part, like,
and
just
now
take
like
the
in
points away.
a lot of these RPGs, like in Honkai Star Rail, they just have auto battle for that reason.
Yeah, I like that. Did you play any of the Final Fantasy VII Remake stuff with their kind of weird battle system that was sort of trying to have elements of it, but it's also just completely active?
I did not, but my wife did, so I sort of saw her play it, and it seemed cool to me from what I saw.
I think it's actually super fun because you can just sit there and be like, I just want to hit stuff with the sword, I don't care. But then you press the button and everything pauses and you be like, well, let me pick this.
Yeah, I like that. It reminded me of Fallout New Vegas, like VATS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. That's interesting. Fallout has a really great way of bringing in turn-based into a first-person shooter.
Couldn't get into it.
Yeah.
Open world overwhelms.
Yeah. That's too bad.